Notes in my personal secret diary, to be released publicly 135 years from now. It all started really about 10 to 11 years ago, when I started to notice a rising number of humans in many high-skilled jobs held by many other races before. That was about 15 or so years after first contact with humans. I remember the contact because it was unusual in that when found, the humans already had a wide colony network of more than 100 inhabited planets. Normally a species is found when they first use or attempt to use a warp drive, as that leaves a clear trace detectable across the galaxy. But humans had never developed warp. Instead they had first spread by generation ships, and later by sending probes that contained what the humans called a gate seed that allowed them to then transit instantly between two spots in space, as long as the seed had travelled to the other end at below light speed. The contact was when one of the probes entered a system held by the Grotcher. So I was curious, when all of the other more than 1,830 known species were found either when they used warp travel for the first time, or when a warp mishap caused a ship to be diverted into their system, how the one species that had a totally different FTL system would integrate into the galactic society. After all, the society has existed for more than 1,000 years, and most new species find fairly quickly a niche or few niches where they are very good, and usually many more where they are fairly good. So it was unusual to see humans in such varied jobs. At first I did not pay much attention beyond, that is curious. But 3 years ago I started to notice something truly weird. In almost any complicated job, it had come common knowledge that a human in the job was almost as good as the race best known for that task. So I started looking into it, going through profession after profession, checking poll after poll, conducting randomized questionnaires as a control to my finding, reading the research on the topic, and so on. What I found shocked me. After controlling for random fluctuations, sampling error and such, it was commonly thought that humans were the second best race at everything. You want the best astronavigator? Hire an Astalomanic. But if you want to spend a little less but still want a good performance, a human is almost as good. Want the best driver? Hire a Talak. But a human is almost as good. Best accountant? Kirk's. Second, human. And the list goes on. I checked a total of 12,421 job titles. Out of them, every one of the 11,320 top paid jobs was the same story. Some other race was considered best, but the humans second best. For the 1,001 lowest paid jobs, humans were not considered at all suitable. There was no bleed over, no overlap, just a clear line. Such things do not happen. It is statistically so unlikely that the real world never has such events. So I continued my search to reasons to what caused this. Finding the truth became an obsession for me. About a year ago I started asking humans directly, and did not seem to get any replies that indicated even knowledge of such. I tried interacting with humans in many settings, and indeed became friends with quite many of them after a nice moment spent in everything from bar to hang gliding. And then, 3 days ago, I was contacted by a human who said he knew my research, and knew the answer, and was willing to meet with me. When I met him at his house, he directed me to the backyard of his house, where he proceeded to grill a nice meal. The human love for a good steak is one of the things a carnivore like me can appreciate. I knew the ritual after having spent so much time with humans. First some beers, bit of chit-chat, then food, and finally after the meal, the serious discussions. So I steeled myself to wait, though my curiosity was overwhelming. Finally, after the meal, we sat down, looking at the sunset, beers in hand, and got to discussing serious things. He started by saying that he and some others had become aware of my quest to find the source of the mystery, and then, with a sigh, he said, "We should really not have made it so obvious in hindsight." When I asked what he meant, he replied, "We did it to protect the rest of the Galactic Order," and continued, "The Galactic Operations Directorate that was founded right after the first contact found some disturbing things." After a sip of his beer, he said, "So we had to find a solution to the several problems presented to us," and after a sigh, "We could not really foresee some of the implications, but we knew we had to at least have a basic solution fairly fast, but given more time we would likely have noticed the statistical problem you found. And in fact we have been made aware of the problem before you were brought to our attention, but changing big plans like that takes time. By this time I was thoroughly confused, and he said, "You should promise not to tell anyone what I tell you, unless you think our plans are a threat to the galaxy. In fact, I will suggest that you wait more than 100 years, so the plan is ready, and that I should definitely not tell anyone before I thoroughly thought through the implications." I asked him what plan and what threat did he talk about, so he began the story from the beginning. When the humans entered the galactic stage, they found a huge community that's set in its ways, with fairly low progress, and in fact fairly low technology and in weird places compared to them. So they launched a massive project in fact-finding and simulations to see what would happen with different approaches to integration. After about 10 years, they then had a plan that they started implementing. So what did they find? They found that humans are superior to every other species in the galaxy in every cognitive task, and superior in most physical tasks that do not rely on raw strength or speed. Some by a little, some by a lot. That hit me hard. So what was their plan? To increase the ability of all other galactic species by training them, and to increase the effectiveness of the galactic system by a large factor. That required humans in all parts of the galaxy, doing all the important jobs without totally displacing the other species. Thus, the second best at things that matter. Why did I promise to keep it a secret? Already in about 15 years, the average skill level of the non-human galactics has risen by 39%. Thus I think that if I give them the 135 years more, they will have had 150 years to complete the process.